Alright folks, welcome back to Rule of Thumb. Today I'm bringing you along for a different fruit. We're going to take a break from peaches for a minute. We stopped at a farm on our way home from visiting friends over the 4th of July, and we picked Montmorency cherries, which are a tart cherry. So today I'm going to make tart cherry preserves. And I'm going to bring you along and see how it turns out. So I'm going to get everything together, show you what we're working with, and we'll go from there. Okay folks, we're back. So as you can see, it is very few ingredients for this. We're going to do the basic cherry preserves. I will bring you along in some future videos for some alternative recipes, some different flavors, but we're going to start with the basic first. Now, I am a huge fan, let me get this up here in front of you folks, of the Ball Classic Pectin. Not just specifically the Pectin, but I pretty much use the recipe on the inside of here as my base recipe. Let's see, can I get all that in there? Okay, can you see that? That is what I use as my base recipe for pretty much every jam, jelly, or preserve that I make. So in this instance, I'm going to make a triple batch. So it says for every 2 8-ounce half pints of jam you will need, and I always use the reduced sugar version. So it says I need 1 1/3 cups of fruit, 3 teaspoons of lemon juice, 1 1/2 tablespoons of pectin, and 1 cup of sugar for each batch. So I tripled it. So I got 4 cups of fruit, I got 9 teaspoons, and actually I think I measured tablespoons here, so I'll have to redo that, of lemon juice, and 3 cups of sugar. Then the directions tell you to prepare your jars, which I have over here just off to the side. Do you see my hand here? Just off to this side, I have my electric water bath canner. I have my jars in there getting hot and sterilized. So it says combine prepared fruit and lemon juice, if required, in an 8-quart saucepan. I'm going to use my big Dutch oven here. Gradually stir in the pectin. Add butter if you're using, which if you don't know what that means, some people add a pat of butter into theirs to lessen the amount of foaming. I don't use butter in mine because I like to give it as gifts, and my nephew Jack is allergic to dairy, so to prevent having to worry about which jars I give him, I just don't use butter. And he loves my jam, so I skip the butter. Then it says bring the mixture to a full rolling boil that cannot be stirred down over high heat, stirring it constantly. Once it's at the full rolling boil, you'll add the entire measure of sugar, stirring it to dissolve, bringing it back up to a full rolling boil, and you boil it hard for 1 minute, stirring constantly. Then you remove it from the heat, skim any foam if necessary, and then you put it into the jars and can it. So that's what we're going to do. So again, I use the recipe on the inside of the Ball Classic Pectin. And that's just, it's the recipe that I use that is tried and true. It works every time. I have never had a problem using this recipe. So that's what I use. Now, I did not chop up my cherries, which is what it recommends, because I'm going to use my immersion blender, and I'll chop it up once everything's mixed together. So I just pitted my cherries, and I'm going to use them like that and then chop them up after. So I'm going to go ahead and get this in the pan and bring it up to a boil, and then I will show you what it looks like when we get to that stage, and I'll bring you back then. Okay folks, so as you can see here, my pot is at a full rolling boil. I added the sugar, I stirred that in, brought it back up to a boil, and I've got my 1 minute timer going, and I'm just stirring, because you want to make sure that that sugar doesn't burn to the bottom of your pan. So just keep it going. Now you can see there's some foam on the top of mine. I am not terribly concerned about that. I find that most of that settles out when it goes into the jar anyway. So I'm not real fussy about it, to be perfectly honest. Um, if I thought that it affected the quality of it, I would do something different, but I've never had any complaints. So my 1 minute is up. I'm going to go ahead and kick the heat off on this and continue to stir this for a minute to let it come down off of the boil, because you still want to be careful that nothing is sticking to the bottom of the pan. And then I used my immersion blender, which is over here to the right, to kind of go through this. Now I don't blend mine until it's super fine. You can see there's still, let's see if I can get some up here. Can you see that on the spoon? There's still chunks of cherries in there. I like that. I like there to be a little bit. So I broke it up some, but I liked there still to be some pieces in there. So now, what I'm going to do is get my funnel here and get this set up here. So I got hot jars in my canner over here, so I'll pull the jar out, and I'm going to use some of the tall jelly jars and some of the short jelly jars to kind of mix it up a little. So I'll take 2 out here to start with, and get my funnel on, get my ladle, make sure you guys can see everything here. Alright, so I'm going to get this in the jars. And the color on this is extraordinary. So I'm going to fill these to a 1/4 inch headspace, which is pretty much the standard for jams and jellies. Wow, this is really incredible. I mean, the color is really something else. I've never done cherry preserves from fresh cherries before. I've always used frozen in the past because I haven't ever lived anywhere where I could get fresh ones. But these are really something else. So I'm going to get something to wipe the rims of the jars. Okay, so I got lids on the jars. We'll grab a couple rings here. Okay, we got rings. And these jars are smoking hot. Take these, get them right back into the canner. Grab us another couple jars. Now I have my canner full of jars, not necessarily because I think I'm going to use them all for this batch, but so that it keeps the jars from moving around inside my canner when I do can them, and then I will have them for the next batch that I do, because I'm going to do multiple batches today. This is going to be close. Scrape the pan on this one in order to get a full jar. So So I got 2 of the 10 ounce and 2 of the 8 ounce jars. Okay, so now I got my jars in the canner. I double checked the time on here, so it says that we're going to process these for 10 minutes for my altitude, and you can adjust accordingly. It has the altitude adjustments in the instructions. Just want to make sure all my jars are locked in here. So, if you guys have not seen one of these, let me turn you a little bit here. So this is the Ball electric water bath canner. So I've had it up on high up until this point, keeping the jars nice and hot. I'm going to kick it up to canning, which will bring it up to the full rolling boil. Once it comes to a full rolling boil, I'll set my timer for 10 minutes. Then I'm going to turn it off, wait for 5 minutes, and then I'll remove the jars. And I will bring you folks back at that time so you can see what the finished product looks like. Okay folks, welcome back. So our jars have processed, and I've let them sit for 5 minutes. And you can see, let's bring this up here, and I will show you what the difference between, you see, so there you can see a little bit of the foam. That's the difference between skimming it and not. So, like I said, depending on how fussy you are, I say go for it. Skim it if you'd like. But just so you can see what the difference is going to be. So, I'm going to get these other jars out of the canner and move on to my next project. But I wanted to bring you folks back so you can see the finished product. I hope you enjoyed this recipe. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. I will bring you back for some more cherry recipes in the future. Until next time, as always, I hope you had a great day.